We are now on Unit 19, the real estate appraisal. Why are we talking about appraisals? Because us as realtors, we need to find the value of a home, whether we're selling or whether we're buying, okay? And we'll kind of dictate what that looks like. These are our learning objectives. Real estate appraisal. An appraisal is an estimate or opinion. So an estimate or opinion of value. In class, I usually get, how about the Zillow estimates, Redfin estimates? Those numbers aren't factual. You know, you have to take a look at the whole market, market trends, market time. There's no one that could give you a true value of a home. Why? Because, you know, the upgrades that people do to them and things like that. But what they will do is give you an estimate and opinion of value based on supportable evidence and approved methods. Regulation of appraisal activities is under FIRA. Requires that appraisals used in connection with federally related transactions must be performed by a licensed appraiser. So guess what? Appraisers also need licenses. Cooperative or comparative market analysis, also called CMA. We'll refer to it as a CMA. It could come in a form of a report, just talking to people, but different from an appraisal report. It features properties similar to the subject, property and size, location, and amenities. So a CMA, when we're researching CMAs, you know, this might be a subject house. We'll go, say, 1 mile out, and then we do a circle, and then, you know, we try finding houses that are similar. We try looking at sold properties. Why? Because we know the value of sold properties. If there's a boundary line, you know, say this is Berwyn and this is Cicero, are we going to be able to use the Cicero properties? Most likely not, right? So we always want to stay in the area. The other thing that we have to take into consideration is, let's say, let me erase this, and let's say we're talking about Berwyn. Berwyn has north and south. Which one's usually more desirable? South Berwyn. So that means that the properties in South Berwyn might have a different value than North Berwyn. That's why it's very important to understand your area, be there for the appraisal, and make sure that, you know, you get the house appraised at the correct price. Real estate appraising. So we have also something called broker price opinion. Is something that we could do. It's a less expensive alternative. Do we usually do it in the field? Usually not. Why? We let the appraisals handle that job, and the appraisers are the only ones that could give back the value to the loan officer. Dust creates value. So D-U-S-T. Let me do this. So D-U-S-T. So demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Relative ease okay, so demand, the need to or desire for possession, ownership, plus financial capacity. Utility, usefulness for the intended purpose. Scarcity, a finite supply. And transferability, relative ease with which ownership rights are transferred from one person to another. So when we talk about this stuff, the price always follows demand. Utility, the property has to be functional, and we'll hit on what that actually means on the functionality of things. Scarcity, you know, right now there's very, very low inventory, so there's scarcities involved. Why? Because there's not much to pick from. So here's some interesting stuff. We have market value, market cost, market price. Many people in the industry including myself, when I first began, we interchanged these vocabs, and it's incorrect. So market value, the most probable price that a property should bring in for sale. Market cost, the original purchase price. Okay, it was the original purchase price. Market price, what a property actually sells for. So the market price is what someone finally said, hey, you know what, this is what I'm willing to give you, and it actually closed. Okay, they're all three of these are different because it's many sellers, they believe their houses could sell for a lot more, but we have to let them know is that market price is always the dictation of where they should be selling their property. Okay. Basic principles of value. We'll go through this right now. Anticipation. Value is created by the expectation that certain event will occur. Anticipation is the foundation on which the income approach to value is based on. When we looked at Pilsen, a lot of people started putting money into Pilsen, and now you paid out twofold. Why? Because Pilsen has now become one of the more expensive areas to buy, and back in the day it wasn't. Change. No physical or economic condition remains constant. So change. No physical or economic condition remains constant. Competition. The interaction of supply and demand is called competition. We want competition. Why? Because sometimes it helps us sell our property better than the other. When we look at our competitions, here's the subject property, here's a comparable property, which we'll talk about shortly. Our property might have a cement driveway. This might have asphalt. We might have brick versus siding, right? Which one becomes more desirable to buy? Probably our subject property. So competition is what we look at to see what we end up either selling, buying a house for, and getting the value. Conformity. All conformity means is maximum value is created when a property is in harmony with its surroundings. What does that correlate to? So, as we see here, all these houses are the same. That means if this house sold for $150, max, this is the highest property it sold. So all these houses are going to be between, maybe $140 and $150, depending on, the insides and things like that. But if all the houses are pretty much the same square footage and things like that, the only time that the pricing is actually going to change is, guess what? The stuff that's actually inside the property, right? Did they do upgrades, no upgrades, things like that. So sometimes it could be good, sometimes it could be bad. When we look at a condo building, most condos sell for the price of whatever the other condo sold for. Why? Because it's easy to dictate, oh, well, that condo sold for $170, this condo must be worth $170. Contribution. The value of any part of a property is measured by its effect on the value of the property of the whole. So when we talk about Chicago is not a big pool city. So not a lot of people are looking for pools in the backyard. So this could actually maybe bring down the value of your house. But guess what people are always looking for? They're looking for kitchens. Brand new kitchens are always going to increase the value of your house. Okay. Highest and best use. Highest and best use, the best way I could put it is, let me read the definition and then I'll try explaining it a little bit better. So the most profitable single use to which the property may be put is called the highest and best use. The use must be legal, economically, or financially feasible, physically possible, and maximum productive. So I gave this example. And let me do this. Okay. So I'm going to draw a street real quick. So this is a busy street. This is a small street over here. Okay. I currently have a property that sits on a lot. This property is zoned commercial. Now, the question that my client was telling me was like, hey, I know commercial properties are a little bit more desirable. The issue is, guess what? This is a small street. There was already a business here and it tried selling before, right? And so there was a building on it and they tried selling it and never sold. Now there is no building, it's just vacant land. The reason being it never sold was because the highest and best use isn't really a commercial because there's not enough traffic going through, right? And the other issue is that that we're having is everyone's saying, oh well, just sell it as a residential. But what people don't understand is that if someone's going to build a house, do you think they're going to build a small house, right? Or do you think they need to build a big house in order for it to be worth it? So in the area, the average new constructions are between $350 and $450. So now they have to determine whether, because this one's a semi-busy street, is the front of a house going to go here or is the front of a house going to go here? What are the issues? If we go this way, the garage is now going to take up a lot of the lot because they need a 2-car garage. And so now they're going to have less yard space. If we go this way, they'll have more yard space, but it'll be a lot narrower. So it's something that we would have to sell to a developer, and the developer needs to know right away whether it's a good deal or not. So highest and best use is whatever the property is owned at, making sure that we sell it correctly at what we know what is the best use for that property. Increasing in emission returns, as long as money is spent on improvements, produces as an increase in income or value. The law of increasing returns applies. When additional improvements do not increase income or value, the law of diminishing return also applies. So if someone paid $20,000 to put an in-ground pool in Chicago, they probably lost out on that $20,000. Maybe it adds a little bit of value, but not many people are looking for that. But if someone puts $10,000 into a kitchen, nice kitchen here, cabinets, cabinets, then yeah, they'll probably get a return on it. Why? Because everyone likes a beautiful kitchen. Everyone could use a beautiful kitchen. Plottage. Principle of plottage is merging or consolidating adjacent lots into a single large one. Produces a greater total value than the sum of two sites valued separately. So plottage is the merging of something. So I sold a property, and we'll do it here, where this was the property right here, busy street, small street. The lot went from the front to the back, so we had access from both ends. This is where, so it was a very, very oversized lot. The middle line is where you could split the lots because that's where how all the other lots are split, right? One split here, one split here. So house and then house. House and then house. Our house was right here. So then we had to dictate, is it better to sell it as a whole, to split it, or determine how we're going to list it? So we found out that the front property that's on the busy street would only go for $75,000. The back lot we could possibly get right around $90,000. But since we were able to sell the whole thing with the building, we were able to get 210 out of it. Okay, so that is plottage. Regression and progression. Regression is the worth of a better quality property and adversely affected by the presence or a lesser quality property. Progression, the value of a modest home would be higher if it were located among larger, fancier properties. So I drew this out. So if you have one big house and little house, little house, little house, little house, who value gets helped? The small house or the big house? The little house's values will go up because now we have this big house there. So you never want to be the first one on the block. And if we have a big house, little house, big house, big house, which one would be hurting the value? This little house. So the little house still gets the value, but these houses would be hurting because this little house is still here. The values can't equally go up. Substitution. The maximum value of a property tends to be set by how much it would cost to purchase an equally desirable and valuable substitute property. Substitution is a foundation of the sales comparison approach. So we're substituting things from one house to another house. Supply and demand. The value of a property depends on the number and price of the properties available in the marketplace. The number of prospective purchasers and the price buyers will pay. When supply increases, the value decreases. When demand increases, the value increases. Price always follows demand. So we have three approaches. We have sales comparison, cost approach, and income approach. As realtors, we're most likely going to be using a sales comparison approach. Why? Because we're going to be comparing houses that have sold versus our subject property. Cost approach deals with like special use properties. Okay, so when you guys think of cost approach, think of like a library. Why a library? Because you can't, you can't go a mile out and say, oh well, this library sold, for 200,000, so this library was going to sell for 200,000 as well. No, there's not a lot of stuff that you could compare to. So the cost approach is actually how much it would take to rebuild that special use property. So like libraries, schools, police stations, things like that. Income approach, simple, right? This is where we look at this based on the gains that an investor would have, right? Or how much money something is bringing in, how much money a building is bringing in. So opinion, so the sales comparison, opinion of value is obtaining by comparing the property being appraised. Subject property with recently sold comparable properties. Adjust for the differences. So one thing that I was teaching was, say this is the subject property, okay? The subject property never moves. Comparable 1, comparable 2, comparable 3. What we're trying to do is that if we're trying to figure out if something's better or poorer, okay? So if the comparable property is better, then we subtract. Why? Because we're trying to get as close to a average sales that we can. So the only way we could dictate that is either by adding the value of something or taking the value of something. So if our subject property had 2 bedrooms and our comparable property had 3 bedrooms, guess what? We have to decrease it to now be comparable with a 2-bedroom property. So maybe that other bedroom they might say that other bedroom is about a $5,000 value. So then we have to decrease 5,000 in order to now compare them to the subject property. So let's take a look at this. So if it's better, we subtract. If it's poorer, we add. Okay? So why? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a good average to dictate what we should list the property. And then we could say, okay, hey, look at all these properties that have sold, but this property, they have done a lot of upgrades. This property, they did a little bit of updates. So now we get a better understanding of where we need to be. And look at the subject property. The subject property never changes. So we're just comparing the changes to the actual comparable properties. Reproduction costs, replacement costs, and determining RCN. Okay. So based on the principle of substitution, estimate the value of the land as though it were vacant and available. Okay, estimate current cost of constructing the buildings and improvements. Estimate amount of depreciation, deduct accrued depreciation from current construction costs, and add estimated value. So when we look at principle substitution, so understand that it's 10 years ago it was probably cheaper to build than what it is now. Everything has increased. So everything is basically an estimate of how much something might cost to actually rebuild. Determining reproduction or replacement costs. So we're going to be basing it off square foot method, unit per unit method, quality survey, and index method. Okay. So square foot method, cost per square foot of a recently built comparable. Unit in place method, replacement is based off the replacement cost. Estimate based on the construction cost per unit of measure of individual building components, including material, labor, overhead, and builder's profit. Quantity survey method is the quality and quantity and quality of materials and labor are estimate on a unit cost basis. These factors are added to indirect cost to arrive to the total cost of the structure. The index method, a factor representing the percentage increase of construction cost up to the present time, is applied to the original cost of the subject property. Depreciation, loss in value due to any cause. So basically physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence. So basically functional obsolescence. So true story. I have a house. Let's say the door opened this way. The stairs were over here to go to the basement. So to go down, there was a door here, and then there was a room here. When we opened the door here, we found out that this was literally a toilet, and this was their second bath that they were talking about. And then there was another door here. So we had to go through the bathroom to go downstairs and go into the basement. So do you think that's actually functional? So if someone's in the bathroom, how would anyone be able to go into the actual basement? They would literally have to go all the way around in order to get down there. Value is based on and so that was functional obsolescence. Okay. Value is based, so the income approach, value is based on the present value of the right to future income. So, and we'll talk about that. So when we look at how much something's going to bring, so we find out how much it brings in, and we have to subtract all the expenses, and then right now we'll talk about cap rates. So remember, this is Mr. T, okay? So when we have a line, we're going to divide. So when we have a horizontal line, when we have a vertical line, we have to multiply, as you can see here. Okay, so if we want to find out what I is, we cover up I, and we multiply R by V. If we want to find out what R is, if we want to find out what R is, we do I divided by V. So let's take a look at this. So what do we do to get to the answer? So we know that this unit has 6 units, or this building has 6 units. Each unit is $500 per month. Anytime we get a math problem, I told all the students, do everything annually. Okay, annually. Why? Because then it's easier to break it down into monthly if you need to. So we do 6 times 500 equals 3. It should be 3,000. All right, 6 times 500 is 3,000. Okay. Then we do, if we want, we always do it annually. So 3,000 times 12 equals 36,000. Then we have expenses. Anytime we have expenses, we have to subtract. So subtract 6,000 leaves us with 30,000. Let's get our T formula. I on top, R to the left, V to the right. We know our rate. Anytime we have a percent, so 5%, to use it mathematically, we move over the decimal to the left 2 spots. 1, 2. So it's 0.05. So this converts into 0.0. Let me erase this. 0.05. So that's going to be the rate. So let's do it like this. 0.05. And then we know that the income is 30,000, right? Because what are we trying to find? We're trying to find the value, so we don't know what V is. Okay, so we don't know what V is. So 30,000 goes on top. So what do? We divide 30,000 divided by 0.05 gets us, what does it get you guys? 600,000. Okay, that's how we do it. So the answer is 600,000. If you guys do it incorrectly, ask yourself logically, can you buy a house for 15,000? You know, so there is some so the exam is based off logic. Okay. So when you guys are doing this stuff, you always do the T-charts. That way you guys could plug and chug things and move things around if you need to. Gross rent multiplier used for 1, so single family houses, so 1 to 4 unit residential rental properties. Gross income multiplier used for 5 or more units commercial or industrial properties. This is the appraisal process. You guys could pause, and if you guys want to read through it. The appraisal report. Once the approaches have been reconciled and the opinion of value has been reached, the appraiser prepares a report for the client, which looks like this. It should give some value, let's say right around here, and it will let you know how much value the property is worth. It's very hard to fight the appraisal if you don't know your area correctly. Why must an appraiser also have knowledge of general real estate concepts, financing, and construction? This is pretty simple. Remember, we were talking about Berwyn, right? So we were talking about Berwyn, and we talked about that it has a north side and south side Berwyn, right? Which one's more desirable? South side Berwyn. So if they're looking at comps based off north side Berwyn, guess what? The numbers are going to be way off. So you have to let these appraisers know the information correctly, and you have to know your area correctly. The income approach is the most important in the appraisal of a condominium. False, right? Condominiums aren't meant to produce money, so we would use a cost comparison. Or I'm sorry, we would use a sales comparison. So a sales approach. The cost approach to value, the appraiser makes use of the sales prices or similar buildings in the area. So false. That is, again, the sales approach. To find the value of a property using the income approach to value, if the net operating income and capitalization rate were known, the appraiser would divide the net operating income by the capitalization rate or cap rate. So, remember, I, R, V. They want to know the value. So, are we dividing? Yes, true. Here's this, so you could pause here. If you need to write these down, pause here. Pause here. Pause here.